Hello there. This story I'm about to tell you, I came across when I was just doing some general reading around some Norse mythology, and I came across a reference to Odin's horse. Now, Odin's horse, Sleipnir, has 8 legs. Not 4 legs, 8 legs. And you would think that this is the most unusual thing about this horse, but oh no. Let me tell you about how Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, came into being. And we will start in Asgard, that shining, fortified citadel of the gods. There it is, up in the top of Yggdrasil, the world tree, near the top, the penthouse, if you will. It was a very desirable residence. And there you would find all the gods. You would find Odin and Loki and Thor with his hammer, and Freya, the beautiful, powerful goddess, and Baldur, Mr. Popular, and all the gods were there. And Asgard was it was a pile of rubble when we start this story. There wasn't much left of it. There'd been enormous battles between the gods and the frost giants. And between them, they'd pretty much smashed it to pieces. And it was in desperate need of fortification and fast. And one day, across the Rainbow Bridge, there came riding a stranger, a huge man on the back of a giant black stallion. And he sought audience with the gods, and he offered them his services. And he could, he said, build them the strongest wall the world had ever and would ever see, to surround Asgard and protect it from now until the end of time. It would be so high, nobody would be able to get over it. It would be so strong and so magical, it would be impenetrable to anyone who wished them ill. And he would do it all in just 3 seasons. And all he required as payment was the sun in the sky, and the moon, and the hand of Freya in marriage. Not much to ask for an impenetrable wall that would protect them until the end of time. And he left the gods to talk about it amongst themselves, and this they did, much to the disgust of Freya, who was quite outraged at the idea of being used as a bargaining chip. And the arguments went on, and Loki, that shape-shifting trickster, stepped forward and made a suggestion. How about, he said, instead of 3 seasons, we make him do it in 1, and we say that no man can help him, and if he gets the whole wall built in 1 season and no man helps him, then we give him everything he asks for. At which there was a bit of a shout of outrage from Freya, but they thought this was a good plan. It was an impossible task. There was no way this work could be done in 1 season, before the end of winter, in fact. And if on the first day of spring it wasn't completed, he wouldn't get paid. And so the bargain was struck. The builder was given safe passage in Asgard while he worked, and he began to work. He went out that afternoon, actually, and he started work straight away. And the following day, the gods watched, and they sniggered together at the antics of this man. And then they watched a bit longer, and their amusement turned to concern, because actually, this man, he seemed to work without rest. He had muscles on his muscles. He could haul huge boulders, and he just kept going morning, noon, and night. And not only that, he had his stallion working with him. And his stallion could work at a phenomenal rate. They watched every day as the stallion and the builder made their way through the forest and off to the quarry, and then they would come back, dragging behind them what looked like half a mountain of stones on a net. And this builder would heft these huge boulders and chip them to the right shape, and they would fit them together like pieces in a jigsaw to make this, what was actually a phenomenal wall. And it was going up at a rate of knots. And as winter progressed, they realised actually there was a chance he could get this finished before the first day of spring. And when it got to maybe the night before, they dragged Loki back into the throne room. It was his idea. What was he going to do about it? Freya was most vocal. Look, said Loki, leave it with me. I'm a fixer. I can fix things. And he got away with it on pain of death, actually. If he couldn't fix it, it would be his life that was forfeit. And so Loki skulked away to think. Well, that evening, the builder rode his black stallion off into the forest. It was still quite snowy, although the snows were starting to thaw now, for next day was the first day of spring. And as they rode through the forest, everything was still. It was a cloudless night. The stars were prickling in the sky, and it was so cold that the air that came out of the stallion's nostrils hung there like clouds. All sounds were muffled. And then all of a sudden that stallion stopped, stuck still. And his ears went up. And his nostrils flared. And there in front of him on the path trotted out the most dainty, delicate little mare. And she looked at him. And she whinnied a little bit, and she turned around several circles just so he could have a really good look at her. And then she looked at him over her shoulder, and she raised her tail up and snorted. Well, the stallion, that was enough for him. He reared up, he threw the builder off onto the floor. The builder just managed to grab hold of the reins, and the stallion began to chase the mare. Well, he hung on for all his life, and the snow was slippery. He was dragged along. He managed to wedge his feet in behind a stone, and he hove as hard as he could, and then snap, the reins went, and that stallion was off like a shot into the woods after that mare. Well, that mare ran for her life. She leapt over frozen streams. She leapt over logs. She battered her way through low branches and undergrowth until she was scratched and panting and foaming, and foam flecked her sides. And she ran and she ran and she ran, and thundering after her constantly was this huge black stallion, snorting and rearing and chasing her and gaining on her. At some point during that night, the mare became too exhausted to run any further. And the stallion and the mare stood facing each other across the clearing. And the mare watched the stallion approach, and Loki looked out from behind that mare's eyes, for as you might have guessed, it was Loki the shapeshifter who tried to tempt away the builder's stallion. And as Loki saw that black stallion approaching him and pawing the ground, he did wonder to himself, had he not bitten off a bit more than he can chew? Well, the stallion's hooves thudded through the snow as he advanced upon that little silver mare. And then with a great roar of triumph, he leapt upon the back of her, and he began to... Well, we best leave that bit to your imagination. The following morning, the stallion had still not returned, and the pink blossom began to form on the trees of that first day of spring. And the builder knew there was no way he could finish that wall. He'd lost. And he became so enraged, he started to smash the wall that he'd built into pieces. And as the gods watched him, they realised this was no ordinary builder. With the strength and the rage that he showed, it was clear he was actually a frost giant, and no doubt their wall was riddled with secret entrances into Asgard. And so that builder was given the wages they felt he was deserved. Thor came along with his huge hammer, and he smashed the builder's head into 1,000 pieces, which went skittering across the 9 realms. Quite harsh, I think, but you don't want to mess with the Norse gods. And what of Loki? Loki deserved a reward, no doubt, for making sure that builder never managed to finish his wall. But he was nowhere to be seen. And it wasn't until several months later that he came swanning back into Asgard. And he was leading a foal with 8 legs. a grey foal, a horse that he'd given birth to a few weeks earlier. An 8-legged foal that was destined to become the steed of none other than Odin himself. Hope you enjoyed that story. My name's Maria Cradali. Thank you for listening.